The voice on the phone was professional but concerned. A fraud alert specialist from my credit monitoring service. Miss Donovan, we've detected unusual activity on your credit report. 3 new accounts opened in the past 6 weeks. My stomach dropped. 3 accounts? I hadn't opened anything. What kind of accounts? I asked, my voice steady despite the panic rising in my chest. The specialist listed them carefully. A credit card with a $3,000 limit, already maxed out. A furniture financing account with $5,000 in charges. And a utility account at an address I didn't recognize. But I did recognize it. The moment she read the street name, my blood went cold. It was Ava's new apartment. The smaller place she'd just moved to. The fresh start she'd mentioned. The one I genuinely hoped would bring her peace. Ma'am, are you still there? The specialist asked. I exhaled slowly, my mind already shifting into the same calm focus that had protected me before. Yes, and I need to file fraud reports immediately. Because apparently, getting locked out of my apartment had just been the beginning. What they'd done with my identity was so much worse. I didn't panic. Panic wastes time. Instead, I grabbed my laptop and started documenting everything the specialist told me. Account numbers, opening dates, billing addresses. Every detail mattered. The credit card had been opened 5 weeks ago, right around the time Theo had officially moved out of our old apartment. The furniture account opened 3 weeks ago, matching exactly when Ava had started talking about downsizing. The utility account was brand new, opened just days ago. The timeline was too precise to be coincidence. This had been planned, systematically. While I'd been choosing peace and moving forward, they'd been using my information to fund their transition. My social security number, my credit, my name. I felt something harden inside me, but it wasn't anger. It was clarity, the same clarity that had helped me reclaim my apartment months ago. I called my bank next, then the credit bureaus. Each conversation was calm, factual, methodical. By midnight, I had fraud alerts placed on all my accounts and affidavits started for each fraudulent charge. Evidence replaces emotion. My father's words echoed again, and I had plenty of evidence to collect. The next morning, I requested detailed statements for each fraudulent account. What arrived made my jaw tighten. The credit card charges told a story. Furniture stores, electronics, a security deposit for an apartment, even grocery delivery services. They'd furnished Ava's entire new place using my credit. The furniture financing was worse. A full living room set, bedroom furniture, kitchen appliances, delivered to Ava's address. Signed for by someone using my name, but the signature didn't match mine. I took pictures of everything. Screenshots, PDFs, transaction histories. Then I did something that felt both necessary and painful. I searched social media. Ava's Instagram showed her new apartment, bright photos, clean aesthetic, fresh start captions about independence and growth. And there, in the background of multiple photos, was the furniture. The exact items charged to accounts opened in my name. She'd even tagged the furniture store, thanking them for making her new space perfect. My hand stayed steady as I screenshot every post. Dated, time-stamped, public evidence. Then I made a list of what I needed to do next. Police report, attorney consultation, credit dispute letters, each step written clearly. No emotion, just action. Filing the police report felt surreal. I sat across from Officer Hayes, a woman in her 40s who'd clearly heard every kind of identity theft story. But when I showed her my documentation, her expression changed. "This is unusually organized," she said, flipping through my folder. "Most victims don't have this level of detail." I'd learned that lesson before. Documentation protects you when words fail. I explained the timeline calmly. The roommate situation, the lock change, the move, then the discovery of fraudulent accounts matching her relocation timeline exactly. Officer Hayes took notes carefully. "Do you know how they got your information?" she asked. I nodded. "We lived together for 5 years. She had access to mail, documents, everything." The officer's expression hardened. "That makes it worse legally. Relationship-based identity theft carries additional charges." She filed the report officially, handing me a case number. "This will take time," she warned. "These cases move slowly." I understood, but time didn't bother me anymore, because I'd learned something important. Justice doesn't need speed, it needs documentation. And I had plenty. But what I didn't know yet was how deep this actually went. The attorney I consulted specialized in identity theft cases. Her name was Patricia Reeves, recommended by a coworker who'd dealt with financial fraud before. She reviewed my evidence with sharp, focused attention. After 20 minutes, she looked up. "Ms. Donovan, this is textbook fraud. Clear intent, documented transactions, provable damages." She paused. "But there's something else you should check." My stomach tightened. "What?" Patricia explained that identity thieves rarely stop at credit cards. They often open other accounts, loans, rental applications, even employment verification. "I'd recommend pulling a comprehensive credit report," she said, "not just the monitoring service summary, the full report." I did that immediately after leaving her office. What I found made me sit down hard. 2 additional items I hadn't known about. A cell phone account opened 4 months ago, and a loan application that had been denied 3 weeks ago. The cell phone account had been active for months, hundreds of dollars in charges, international calls, data overages, all billed to an address I recognized, the old apartment, our old apartment, where Ava and Theo had lived after I moved out. They'd been using my credit for months, long before I'd even left. That discovery shifted everything, because it meant the fraud hadn't started after I moved. It had been happening while I still lived there, while I'd been quietly contributing to bills, while I'd trusted Ava completely. The timeline made me feel sick. 4 months ago, Theo was still temporarily staying. I was still covering extra expenses, still believing Ava's explanations about tight finances. And the whole time, they'd been opening accounts in my name, using my information, stealing my identity while I slept down the hall. I called Patricia again. "It started earlier than I thought," I told her. Her response was immediate. "That strengthens your case significantly. It shows premeditation and extended fraud." She recommended I document everything from that period. Bills I'd paid, conversations I remembered, any access they'd had to my personal information. I started building a timeline, a detailed, dated record of everything. When Theo moved in, when bills increased, when Ava started acting distant, when charges appeared on fraudulent accounts. Patterns emerged clearly, and those patterns told a story I'd been too trusting to see before. But I was seeing it now. Every detail, every manipulation, every calculated move. I didn't confront them immediately. That wasn't my style anymore. Instead, I gathered more evidence. I contacted the cell phone company, requested account details, call logs, payment history. The representative was helpful once I explained it was fraud. "The account shows automatic payments from a credit card," she said. I knew which one. My legitimate card. The one I'd used for years. Somehow they'd gotten that number and attached it to the fraudulent phone account. "Can you tell me who's been using the phone?" I asked. "I can see the primary line has been transferred between devices," she said, "currently active on a device registered to." She paused. "Theo Morrison." My breath caught. Morrison. I finally had Theo's last name. That mattered for police reports, for legal documentation, for everything. I thanked her and updated my case file. Then I did something else. I checked my old email accounts, ones I rarely used anymore, and there, buried in an old folder, I found something chilling. Password reset confirmations, from months ago, for accounts I hadn't reset, my credit monitoring, my bank alerts, even my phone carrier. Someone had been systematically resetting my passwords, locking me out of my own digital security, and I knew exactly who. The password resets had happened gradually, one every few weeks, subtle enough that I'd missed them at the time, easy to dismiss as spam or mistakes. But together, they showed a pattern. Someone had been carefully gaining control of my accounts, disabling alerts, changing security settings, preparing to commit fraud without immediate detection. I contacted my email provider. They confirmed unauthorized access from an IP address that matched the old apartment's internet service. The access had started 7 months ago, long before any lock changes, before any obvious conflict. They'd been planning this for months. While I'd been their friend, their financial support, their stability, I felt something cold settle in my chest. Not rage, not betrayal anymore, just absolute clarity. Because this wasn't impulsive, it wasn't desperation. It was calculated theft, premeditated, systematic, criminal. I updated Patricia immediately. She responded within an hour. "This changes everything. We can prove intent and planning. The case is much stronger now." She scheduled a meeting for the next day. Meanwhile, I did something else. I called a forensic accountant, because if they'd planned this carefully, there might be more I hadn't found yet. And I intended to find everything. The forensic accountant was thorough. His name was Vincent Hayes, no relation to the police officer, and he specialized in financial fraud cases. He requested access to everything, my credit reports, bank statements, even old utility bills from the apartment. I need to see the full financial picture, he explained. Sometimes fraud leaves patterns beyond obvious theft. I gave him everything. 2 days later, he called me back. Miss Donovan, I found something interesting. My stomach tightened. What? He explained carefully. The fraudulent accounts weren't just random. They'd been opened strategically to stay under certain reporting thresholds. Each credit line was just under $3,000, just small enough to avoid certain automated fraud detection. Whoever did this knew what they were doing, Vincent said. This suggests financial sophistication. That surprised me. Ava had always claimed she was bad with money, always struggling, always needing help. But this showed careful planning, understanding of credit systems, knowledge of how to exploit them. There's more, Vincent continued. I found evidence of what might be a larger pattern. Applications for accounts that were denied. Attempts that failed. This wasn't their first try. My hands tightened on my phone. How long had they been trying to use my identity? Vincent sent me his full report that evening. It was detailed, comprehensive, damning. The denied applications showed attempts going back almost a year. Small loans, store credit cards, rental applications. Most had been rejected for various reasons. Insufficient income, poor credit on the applicant's end, red flags in verification. But they'd kept trying, adjusting their approach, learning what worked and what didn't. Until finally, they'd succeeded. And once they succeeded, they'd moved quickly. 3 accounts opened within 6 weeks, maximum credit used immediately. No payments made. Classic fraud pattern, Vincent noted. They never intended to pay, his report stated. The timeline shows systematic extraction of maximum value with no concern for consequences to the victim. That victim was me. My credit. My financial future. My trust. I forwarded the report to Patricia and Officer Hayes. Then I made a decision. It was time to stop investigating quietly and start taking action publicly, not dramatically, not emotionally, but officially, legally, permanently. Because some situations don't deserve quiet resolution, they deserve consequences, and I was about to deliver them. The next morning, I filed formal charges. Filing criminal charges felt different than filing fraud reports. More final, more serious. Officer Hayes walked me through the process carefully. Once you file, this becomes an official investigation, she explained. Are you certain? I looked at the evidence spread across her desk. Credit reports, account statements, email logs, social media screenshots, Vincent's forensic analysis. I'm certain, I said. The charges were filed under multiple counts: identity theft, financial fraud, unauthorized use of personal information. Each count carried serious penalties. Officer Hayes assured me the case was strong. With this level of documentation, prosecution will be straightforward. But she warned me about something else. They'll likely be contacted soon. Once they know you've filed charges, they may try to reach out. I nodded. I'd expected that. What should I do if they contact me? Don't engage, she said firmly. Let everything go through official channels now. That suited me perfectly, because I'd learned something important over these months. Silence is more powerful than explanation. Boundaries work better than confrontation. And sometimes the strongest response is letting consequences speak for themselves. I left the police station feeling something I hadn't expected. Not satisfaction. Not revenge. Just peace. Because I'd done what needed to be done. The contact came sooner than expected. 2 days after filing charges, my phone started buzzing. Ava's number. I didn't answer. She left a voicemail. Her voice was panicked. Different than I'd ever heard it. Claire, please call me back. The police called. I don't understand what's happening. Please, we need to talk. I deleted it. An hour later, texts started. This is a misunderstanding. I can explain everything. Please don't do this. I blocked the number. Then Theo tried. Unknown number, but I recognized his voice on the voicemail. Angry. Defensive. You're blowing this way out of proportion. We can settle this without involving the law. I saved that voicemail, forwarded it to Officer Hayes, because threatening messages after fraud charges? That was additional evidence. That evening, a mutual friend called. "Ava's really upset," she said carefully. "She says you're accusing her of something she didn't do." I kept my voice calm. The evidence speaks for itself. "But maybe you could just talk to her? Work it out, privately." That suggestion used to work on me. Used to make me doubt myself. Not anymore. "This is beyond private resolution," I said simply. "It's a legal matter now." Silence. Then quieter. "What did she actually do?" I didn't explain. Just said she'll have a chance to explain in court. And ended the call. The next development surprised me. Patricia called with news. "They've hired an attorney," she said. "That was fast and expensive," which raised a question. Where had they gotten money for a lawyer if they'd been so financially desperate? Patricia had the same thought. "I'm guessing they'll try to settle before this goes further." She was right. Their attorney contacted her 3 days later with a settlement offer. They'd pay back everything. Drop all disputes if I dropped the criminal charges? Patricia laid out the offer carefully. "It's actually a decent amount, full restitution plus damages." I listened silently. "But," she continued, "accepting settlement means the criminal case likely stops. They avoid prosecution." I thought about that. The easy way versus the right way. The money versus the principle. The quick resolution versus the lasting consequence. Then I thought about the timeline. 7 months of planning, password resets, unauthorized access, calculated theft, and I made my decision. "No settlement," I said clearly. Patricia paused. "Are you sure? This guarantees you get your money back." "I don't want their money," I replied. "I want the truth on record. Officially, permanently. Because some things matter more than financial recovery. Like making sure this never happens to someone else." My decision not to settle shocked people. Friends questioned it. "You could get your money back immediately," one said. "Why drag this out?" Because money wasn't the point anymore. The point was accountability. The point was consequences. The point was ensuring that people who'd systematically planned to steal my identity faced real repercussions. Patricia respected my decision. "Not many victims choose this path," she said. "Most just want it over." I understood that. Emotionally, settling would be easier, faster closure, less stress. But ethically, this felt right. The investigation continued. Officer Hayes updated me regularly. We've subpoenaed phone records, financial statements, everything. Evidence was mounting. Meanwhile, social media got interesting. Ava's posts changed dramatically. The happy, fresh start content disappeared, replaced by vague posts about being misunderstood and false accusations. She never named me, but mutual friends knew. Some reached out. Cautiously. "Is this really necessary?" one asked. "She's really struggling." That word. Struggling. Like I hadn't struggled when I was locked out, when I discovered my credit destroyed, when I learned my identity had been stolen by someone I'd trusted. "She made choices," I said simply. "Now she's facing consequences." That ended most conversations, because ultimately people respect clarity, even when they disagree. About a month after filing charges, Officer Hayes called with significant news. They're accepting a plea deal. My heart rate picked up. "What kind of deal?" she explained carefully. Both Ava and Theo would plead guilty to reduced charges. Identity theft in the 3rd degree instead of 2nd. Restitution required, probation, community service, criminal records, permanently. "The prosecutor believes this is a strong outcome," Officer Hayes said. "Guaranteed conviction without trial, uncertainty." I asked the important question. "Will this show on background checks?" "Yes, employment, housing, everything. This follows them." That mattered, because consequences should mean something. They should create pause. Make future victims harder to find. I asked one more question. "Do I have to see them?" "No. You can submit a victim impact statement in writing. The judge will read it during sentencing." I thanked her and sat quietly after hanging up. A victim impact statement. Words describing how this affected me. Part of me wanted to write pages, detail every moment of betrayal, every discovery, every violation of trust. But that wasn't my style anymore, so I wrote something different. Something brief, something powerful. 3 paragraphs, clear, factual, devastating. And I sent it to the prosecutor's office that evening. The victim impact statement was simple. I described the timeline, the access they'd had to my life, my information, my trust, the systematic nature of the fraud, the months of planning, the deliberate deception. Then I wrote something important. This wasn't desperation, it was calculation. They didn't steal because they needed to survive. They stole because they believed they could, because they thought I'd never discover it. Or if I did, that I'd stay silent to avoid conflict. I continued. The financial damage can be repaired, credit can be rebuilt, but the violation of trust, the knowledge that people I considered family spent months planning to exploit me, that damage goes deeper. I ended with one clear statement. I hope the consequences of this case serve as a reminder that identity theft isn't a victimless crime. It's a fundamental violation of someone's security, dignity, and future. And it deserves serious accountability. Patricia read it before I submitted. This is powerful, she said quietly. Simple, but devastating. Good, because I wanted the judge to understand. This wasn't about revenge. It was about justice. The sentencing hearing was scheduled for 3 weeks later. I didn't plan to attend. My statement would speak for me, but as the hearing approached, I changed my mind. Patricia called. The judge would like you there if possible. Victim presence often impacts sentencing positively. I hesitated. Seeing them again felt unnecessary. I'd moved on, built new stability, found peace. But Patricia made a good point. Your presence shows this had real impact, that you're a real person, not just a case file. So I agreed. The morning of the hearing, I dressed professionally, calm, composed, nothing dramatic, just dignity. The courtroom was smaller than I'd expected. Ava and Theo sat at a table with their attorney. They looked different, tired, stressed, smaller somehow. Ava saw me enter. Her face went pale. Theo stared straight ahead. Neither spoke. The judge entered. Proceedings began. Their attorney spoke first, pleading for leniency, claiming this was out of character, a mistake, poor judgment during financial stress. The prosecutor responded firmly, detailed the timeline, the planning, the multiple attempts, the systematic exploitation. Then my statement was read aloud by the prosecutor. Every word, clear, public, permanent. I watched Ava's face as saw her flinch, saw tears, saw something that might have been shame or might have been fear of consequences. Either way, it didn't move me. The judge reviewed everything silently. Documents, evidence, statements. The courtroom was quiet. Then she spoke. This case demonstrates clear premeditation and breach of trust. The victims in these cases often suffer long-term consequences beyond financial loss. She looked directly at Ava and Theo. You exploited a personal relationship systematically. That aggravates the offense significantly. Sentencing came next. Ava received 3 years probation, community service, mandatory financial counseling, full restitution, criminal record. Theo got the same, plus additional fines for his role in the cell phone fraud. The judge added something important. This conviction will appear on background checks. It will affect employment, housing, financial opportunities. That is appropriate. Actions have consequences. Then she turned to me. Ms. Donovan, I commend your thorough documentation and patience throughout this process. Many victims don't pursue these cases. Your courage ensures accountability. I nodded. Not triumphant, just acknowledged. Court adjourned. I left immediately. Didn't wait, didn't speak to them. Didn't need to, because everything that needed to be said had been said. Officially, legally, permanently. Outside, Patricia met me. How do you feel? She asked. I thought about that. Satisfied, I said finally. Not happy, not sad, just satisfied. Because justice isn't about emotion, it's about resolution. Life returned to normal surprisingly quickly after that. The court case was over. Restitution would come gradually through the probation system. My credit was slowly recovering. And emotionally, I felt lighter. Not because of revenge, because of completion. One afternoon, about 2 weeks after sentencing, I received an unexpected package. From Ava. No return address, but I recognized her handwriting. Inside was a check for the full restitution amount. More than required. With a short note. I know this doesn't fix what I did, but I wanted you to have this now, not over years. I'm sorry. Just that. I stared at it for a long time. The check was legitimate. From her account, enough to cover every fraudulent charge. The note was simple. No excuses. No explanations. Just apology. I deposited the check, but I didn't respond to the note. Because some apologies don't need acknowledgement. They just need to exist. Days later, I heard through a friend that Ava had moved again. Different city. Fresh start, for real this time. Theo was gone from her life completely. I felt neither satisfaction nor sympathy hearing that. Just distance. because their story wasn't mine anymore. My story had moved forward. Completely, separately, successfully. About a month later, something surprising happened at work. I was promoted, new position, better salary, more responsibility. During the interview, my boss mentioned something interesting. You've shown remarkable composure this year, even during clearly stressful personal situations. I hadn't realized she'd noticed. I handle things quietly, I said. She smiled. That's exactly why you're ready for leadership. Drama is easy, dignity takes strength. That observation stayed with me, because she was right. The easy response to betrayal is loudness, anger, public confrontation. The harder response is quiet action, documented evidence, legal processes, letting systems work properly. And honestly, the harder path had protected me better than the easy one ever could. That evening, I looked around my apartment, my space, my peace, my life. Everything here was mine, chosen by me, paid for by me, protected by boundaries I'd learned to set. No hidden manipulations, no secret frauds, no violated trust, just clarity. And clarity, I'd learned, was more valuable than almost anything else, because clear boundaries create safe spaces, and safe spaces allow growth. Real growth. The kind that changes everything. I thought about where I'd been a year ago, locked out, confused, hurt, uncertain, questioning my judgment, doubting my worth. Now, I was promoted at work, living peacefully, financially stable, emotionally strong. The transformation wasn't dramatic, it was gradual, built through small, consistent choices, choosing documentation over emotion, evidence over explanation, boundaries over confrontation. Each choice had compounded, creating momentum, building confidence, establishing patterns, and those patterns had become my foundation. One evening, I received a message from an unexpected source, a woman I'd never met. She explained carefully that she'd heard about my case through mutual connections. She was going through something similar. Roommate fraud, identity theft, betrayal. I don't know what to do, she wrote. Everyone says I'm overreacting. I read her message twice, recognized my own story in hers. The doubt, the isolation, the fear of being too much. I responded carefully, not with advice, just with facts. What I'd done, what resources I'd used, what evidence mattered, how systems worked. You're not overreacting, I added. Trust your instincts, document everything, choose yourself. She thanked me repeatedly, and I realized something important. My experience, painful as it was, had value. Not just for me, for others facing similar situations. That conversation inspired something unexpected. I started writing about my experience, not for publication, just for processing. But as I wrote, patterns emerged, lessons learned, mistakes avoided, strategies that worked. I compiled it into a simple guide, protecting yourself from relationship-based fraud, practical steps, legal resources, emotional boundaries. I shared it with a few people, friends, coworkers, that woman who'd messaged me. The response surprised me. This is incredibly helpful, one friend said. I had no idea these protections existed. Another shared it with someone else, then another. Suddenly, my private processing had become public resource. A legal aid organization reached out. They wanted to use excerpts in their fraud prevention materials. With my permission, I agreed. Because if my painful experience could help others avoid similar situations, it had purpose. Meaning beyond just survival. That shift in perspective changed everything, because I wasn't just a victim anymore. I was a resource, a guide, someone who'd been through something difficult and came out stronger. That identity felt powerful, not in a dramatic way, in a quiet, steady, meaningful way. The kind of power that lasts, the kind that helps, the kind that matters. 6 months after the court case, I was invited to speak at a community center. Topic: financial literacy and fraud prevention. I almost declined. Public speaking wasn't my comfort zone, but something made me accept. The audience was small, maybe 30 people. Mixed ages, different backgrounds, but all interested in protecting themselves. I spoke simply. No dramatic story, just facts. How fraud happens, what signs to watch, how to document, where to get help. But I also shared something personal. I lived with someone I trusted completely, and that trust was systematically exploited. Not because I was foolish, because I was kind. And that's important to understand. I paused. Kindness isn't weakness, but kindness without boundaries becomes vulnerability. The room was quiet, attentive. After the presentation, several people approached me. One woman, elderly, looked emotional. I've been helping my grandson pay bills, But lately, things don't add up. I thought I was being paranoid. She wasn't. And after talking through warning signs, she realized she needed to investigate further. I gave her resources, contact information, encouragement. Weeks later, she sent me a letter. She'd discovered fraud, filed reports, protected herself. "You gave me permission to trust my instincts," she wrote. That letter meant more than the court verdict, more than the restitution, because it proved something important. Standing up for myself hadn't just protected me. It had empowered others to protect themselves too. That ripple effect was never something I'd planned, never something I'd sought, but it became the most meaningful outcome of everything I'd been through. My life continued evolving. Work thrived, friendships deepened, new opportunities emerged, but the foundation stayed the same. Boundaries, evidence, self-respect, those principles guided every decision. And they created stability that couldn't be shaken by external chaos. 1 year after the lock change, I looked back at everything. The betrayal, the discovery, the investigation, the resolution, the growth. And I realized something profound. That moment standing at my door, key not turning, hadn't been an ending. It had been a beginning. A catalyst for transformation I'd never have chosen, but desperately needed. Because sometimes growth doesn't come from comfort. It comes from disruption. From being forced to choose yourself when others choose against you. From learning that your peace matters more than their approval. Those lessons changed everything. Not just about that situation. About life, about relationships, about self-worth. And as I sat in my apartment that evening, peaceful and secure, I understood. The worst thing that happened to me had become the best thing I'd done for myself. Not because of revenge, because of evolution. Today my life looks nothing like it did that night outside the locked door. Different apartment, different job title, different confidence level, different understanding of what I deserve. The criminal case is closed, the debt is repaid, the credit is restored, but more importantly, the lesson is learned. Permanently. I don't hear from Ava anymore. No messages, no mutual friend updates, complete separation, and that's healthy. Some relationships don't deserve reconciliation. They deserve distance, respectful, permanent distance. Theo's completely gone from any shared social circles, vanished after the sentencing. Good, because some people aren't worth tracking. Just releasing. The woman who messaged me about her situation? She successfully prosecuted her case too. Used my guide, followed the steps, protected herself. Others have reached out since. Each time I help where I can, because that's what growth looks like. Taking pain and transforming it into purpose. If someone asked me today what I learned from everything, I'd say this. Getting locked out of my apartment taught me where I didn't belong. But discovering identity theft taught me who I actually am. Strong, strategic, unwilling to accept violations silently. And that knowledge, that self-awareness, that unshakable sense of worth, that's what I gained. Not from the betrayal, but from how I responded to it. Because anyone can be betrayed. But not everyone chooses to fight back with dignity, evidence, and calm determination. I did. And that choice changed everything. The locked door wasn't the end of my story, it was the beginning of my strength. And honestly, I wouldn't change that for anything.